I was 16 in my junior year of high school. I had 9 periods in a school day. 5th period was lunch, and straight from there was my astronomy class, which was actually held in one of the 2 basement classrooms of the school. My high school was big. There were 3 floors, and even that wasn't enough to accommodate all the classes offered. So the school built 2 classrooms in the basement. It was honestly kind of creepy down there when nobody else was around. It used to be a janitorial area. However, it was remodeled to better resemble a typical hallway. The only thing was that there were no intercoms or loudspeakers down in the basement at that time. For that reason, no classes were held down their first period for the morning announcements. Everyone referred to this little section of the basement as the chamber, and everyone always tried to get classes down there just because it was air conditioned and the classes were typically easier. Plus, it had its own bathroom. We had a quiz in astronomy that day. Usually, I was one of the first done just because I found the class easy. After I finished my quiz, I texted my friend who was in the other basement classroom to meet me in the bathroom because I was bored. He told me, okay. I walked out of the classroom and down the small hallway to the bathroom. A few seconds later, the door opened and my friend JJ entered the bathroom. We were joking around for a while until JJ checked his phone and said someone texted him saying the school was going on lockdown. We both looked at each other with the same grins. Neither of our teachers saw us leave the classrooms. That meant we had free range of the school while it was on lockdown. We agreed to sneak upstairs and look around the hallways just for the hell of it. The worst that would happen is that we'd explain how we couldn't hear the announcements in the basement classrooms. Upon opening the basement door to the main floor, we were surprised to find all the lights had been turned off, so the hallways were pretty much pitch black aside from the light pouring in from the doors in the lobby. This was legit because usually the lights were left on in the hallways during lockdowns. Something was going down, and we didn't know if we were even comfortable walking around now. JJ stepped out a little further into the hallway, and I followed suit. JJ then looked down the hall and said, "Who's that?" I looked, and emerging from the darkness was a man. At first, we couldn't tell if he was a teacher or not, but as he got closer, we realized this guy wasn't dressed at all like any staff member. He was dressed like a bum. "All right, let's go," I told JJ as we hurried back down to the basement. He surely saw us, whoever he was. We saw both classrooms had their doors shut and lights off, so to avoid making a scene, we decided to hide in the bathroom. I shut the light first thing. There was complete silence in the room. No ventilation, no heaters, nothing. Just the sound of me and JJ breathing, and an occasional drip from the sink. The door to the bathroom suddenly opened, and light from the hallway poured into the bathroom for a brief moment. The door shut, and the bathroom was once again pitch black. Me and JJ tried our best to control our breathing. The room was so silent that we could hear somebody walking over to our side of the bathroom. The person stopped and started breathing really heavily, as if they were out of breath. Me and JJ were both scared to death. JJ did something very dumb. He whispered in my ear, "We have to crawl out through the other stalls." The room was so silent, however, that even JJ's whisper could be heard from across the room. The heavy breathing outside the stall stopped, and the person tried pressing the stall door in. That was when I whispered, "Go," to JJ. We both crawled under the sidewall to the next stall over, and then the next stall, and then finally out to the other side of the bathroom. The person was now full-on banging on the stall door. Me and JJ hopped up off the floor, opened the door, and as the light filled the room again, we saw the guy from upstairs in the corner. We pounded on the door to JJ's class. The teacher let us in within seconds. JJ explained everything as the teacher locked the door, mentioning a gun sticking out of the man's pocket. I was shocked to hear this because I didn't see a gun, but I went along with it anyway. Usually, a bunch of high school students would be laughing their asses off at 2 students causing a scene like this, but I noticed all the kids sitting in the corner looked concerned. A sudden bang at the door made everyone jump, and a couple of girls squealed out of fear. JJ, the teacher, and I could see the man standing at the door, looking through the window while trying the doorknob. After a few bangs on the door, out of what seemed to be anger, he turned and walked down the hallway back to the stairs. We don't know how much longer the lockdown went on for, but for over an hour, we sat in silence in the room, other than the teacher occasionally asking me and JJ questions in a very concerned tone, shaking his head after everything we would tell him. Eventually, somebody from upstairs called the teacher, and he instructed all of us to single file, walk up the stairs and out of the building where we would be greeted by cops. Me and JJ did the best we could at describing the man to the cops and to the dean. One of the cops patted me on the back and we were sent off to go home. After this incident, the school installed cameras everywhere and ramped up the security budget. This incident never got media attention, so honestly, we never found out if police caught the guy. I'm convinced that man had no other intentions but to kill us then and there in that bathroom stall. I'm a retired New Jersey police officer. Throughout my 20 years in the force, the most disturbing call I ever received was for a school lockdown happening at a nearby middle school, of which I'll leave out the name for legal reasons. It happened on a stormy, dark day. My car number was called on the radio to respond to a lockdown where a suspicious-looking man was seen stepping out from a white van parked behind a school and walking into the back door by the boys' locker room. I pulled up to the back parking lot of the school, right next to the white van. Nobody was inside, and all the doors and trunk were locked. I opened the red back door that entered into the gym hallway right by the locker rooms. The main lights had been turned off, so the whole inside of the school was dark. I unholstered the flashlight from my belt and used it to navigate the halls. I made it to the lobby of the school, where a woman emerged from the front office and quietly told me to check the boys' locker room, but to be careful because the person might be armed. I called for backup on my radio and was assured backup was already on the way. I made it back to the hallway I entered from, where I found the boys' locker room right next to the exit. I pushed it open very quietly. There were no windows in the room. Therefore, there was no light whatsoever in that locker room, only the light provided by the flashlight. There was a white noise in the room, some kind of vent on the ceiling blowing air. But even over that, I was hearing faint scratching type noises or little dings on the locker doors from the other side. I was supposed to make my presence as a police officer known, but honestly, I was just too scared. The tension in the room was insane. I held my flashlight in one hand and my gun in the other as I snuck to the other side of the locker room. It seemed like wherever I was in the room, the dings and thuds would be coming from the other side. I was standing in the corner of the locker room, right by the door to the bathroom, when the sound of someone slamming a locker door from another room made me jump out of my skin. I went in the direction where I heard the slam to find out that it was from the boys' football team locker room. There was no door separating the main locker room from the football locker room. The lockers in here were also 3 times the size. I finally had the nerve to make my presence known by shouting, "Police!" After shouting, a kid started screaming help from somewhere in the room. It was very muffled though. The kid pounded on a locker door on the other side of the row I was in. When I found out that the boy was trapped inside of a locker, I felt sick to my stomach. I told him I'd be right back, once again calling for backup while running outside to where the white van was. It was gone. My biggest mistake was not getting the plate number first thing. I told dispatch to be on the lookout for a suspicious white van. I ran back into the school and instructed the staff in the front office to end the school day and to send somebody with a key to the locker room to get the boy out of the locker. The boy was held by the man with a knife on his back, as I speculate. The man was quietly trying to get the 12-year-old boy to his van. The boy was bleeding on his arm from the man cutting him while resisting. The man's van was spotted a week later in a 7-Eleven parking lot, where he was arrested after being properly identified. I was staying in a Hampton Inn. It was mid-January, and I was staying in New Jersey for a weekend for a little getaway trip. My first day there, it snowed a ton. I had nothing else to do, so I decided to go on a walk in the snow, through the town, maybe get some food somewhere. There was this little frozen pond that I passed. It had a couple benches and a small little deck that you could walk onto that hovered over the pond. There was a skinny, old-looking woman standing out by the deck, looking out at the pond. She was wearing this long gown that almost completely blended in with the snow. She looked distraught, and I really wanted to ask if she needed help, but it was cold, and I didn't feel like getting involved in any kind of conversation with a random woman. So I kept walking past the pond until I got to a grocery store, bought some stuff to bring back to the hotel, and quickly walked back the way I came. When I got back to the pond, I noticed the woman wasn't on the deck anymore. I stopped for a second to look out at the pond, and I could have sworn I saw something floating in the water. I walked a little closer to the deck to get a better look. I wasn't sure, but it looked like a gown was floating in the water, slowly sinking deeper under. It was getting really dark and cold, and there was nobody else around to confirm this with, so I walked back to the hotel. I got back to my room and decided to sit down for a while and watch TV. Then there was a knock at the door. I felt like I had to brace myself for who would be at the door, but I got up and opened it. There was nobody there, but there were fresh shoe prints in the snow leading to and away from my door. The next morning, I went to grab breakfast downstairs in the dining hall, and one of the friendly staff members told me, "You look like you saw a ghost last night." I told her I did, and I explained what happened, and she said that about a year ago, a woman drowned in that pond. When I went back to that pond on my last night in New Jersey, I once again saw the same woman standing at the deck, staring out at the pond.